Welcome to Frazier Deeter's Culture of Compliance podcast series, where we discuss compliance as a competitive advantage in today's marketplace. I'm Sabrina Serafin, partner and national leader of Frazier Deeter's process, risk, and governance practice. Today, we're talking to Rob Hutzel, the founder of Cloud & Wire, an emerging technology consulting and fulfillment company that's focused on sharing new management strategies and emerging technologies, smart building systems and edge computing being just a sample. Rob, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
Our topic today is truly one of my favorites. What your CIO isn't telling you. I appreciate this topic because in so many organizations, the management team doesn't really understand their technology environment well enough to ask the right questions. Rob, can you tell us some background about your career and your company so that our listeners can better understand your perspective on this topic?
Sure, happy to do it. This is my fifth technology company that I started. It's about 3.5 years old, and before that I did 9 years in Silicon Valley, where I was fortunate enough to work for some of the top guys in technology, Steve Wozniak being one of them at a startup we built from 50 people to 1,000 people in less than a year and a half. And ended up doing a nice exit out to SanDisk. Before that, I owned a software company, a hardware company, an IBM mainframe company, a poker company, a casino table company. As I mentioned, I was a MC for the World Poker Tour television show. I did some stand-up comedy, and before that, I was a fledgling baseball player. So, kind of seen the pony show, if you will.
So less than a diverse background.
Less than, yes, very, very straightforward.
Well, let's dive into today's topic. With your background, obviously you've worked with a number of different management teams. Where is the disconnect between IT leadership and the ownership and also business users?
Being an owner myself and in technology, we develop a lot of our own code and a lot of our own programs. And I learned this lesson sort of the hard way. I had hired a team of guys back around 99, right before Y2K, if you guys remember Y2K, and the world was going to end, right, to develop a very large software program for a customer of ours. These gentlemen proceeded to basically make screenshots that didn't really work, but they looked like they work, and by about the time November of that year rolled around, we found out that they had really just been more or less goofing off, and one of them had a bad drug habit, one of them was in bankruptcy. It's a really, really crazy story, but the lesson out of all of it, even though it was a very expensive lesson, was that if you're going to be in any sort of business and you're going to hire people in technology that are really crucial to the success of whatever it is your industry or whatever target industry is, whatever software application you're trying to build or run, you've got to have some visibility both inside the company from the technical team, as well as sort of a team outside. Kind of like your mother used to say, your group of friends should include a doctor and a policeman and a lawyer and a dentist, that sort of thing. It's very, very similar for a CEO or any type of upper-level executive that is maybe not as versed in technology as they'd like to be. But there's some very, very interesting ways to go about doing that and building sort of that support structure to help you out.
What kinds of questions should CEOs and other executive leadership be prepared to ask the CIO or IT leadership?
It's interesting now. Our company does quite a bit of upfront consulting. So we act sort of as an agency to help clients find product and contract with them. We'll help do the negotiations. We're a VAR, so we buy and sell equipment. But we do a lot of high-level consulting. And so oftentimes within the same project, we're building sort of this overall vision for the C-level executive team that's non-technical. And then we're working with the IT team to kind of poke around, like put them up on the table, put the robe on and kind of figure out what's really going on. And a lot of times we're the ones that find out where the big disconnect is. Management, the business line users, the VP of sales are all thinking we're all going one way, and the IT guys are dragging their feet, or they're doing everything they possibly can not to have to go there. And it's for a lot of basic, I would say, human nature reasons. Most folks, when they get into IT, they like consistency, like much everybody else, right? Most people like to have the same roles and responsibilities and predictability as what their job is going to be. And people that come in and want to make change, or evolutionary technologies that come in and really kind of disrupt the apple cart, are one, fairly scary for those guys, because there are technologies out there. And one of the companies that I worked for in Silicon Valley was responsible for really bringing those to market, where instead of having 10 or 15 different products in the data center, now we can take all the software functionality from all those different things and we can put them into a single server. It's actually the technology that Facebook and Apple and Salesforce and everybody has built their data centers on. I was fortunate enough to get to help build their data centers and Netflix and AT&T's. And it's this scale-out architecture that basically just has little building blocks, little servers, and you just keep adding and adding and adding them, which is why they have, dozens and dozens of data centers all across the world for each one of those companies now, because the amount of compute that they are taking over now from all of these individual companies that really have been doing it the old way. And what is happening now is that the leadership is hearing about all these new technologies that are coming out. And for the last 4 or 5 years, the IT teams have been kind of dragging their feet because they have server guys and storage guys and network guys and phone guys and all these things now that are being collapsed into single-use products, or they're being sent out to the cloud or hosted like phone systems and call centers. And they're scared and they're nervous, right? And they're also a little worried because as these new products come out, the technology is so new, they may not be up to date with it. Because if you're in a normal job and you've been there for 5 or 10 years, how much change have you really seen? Maybe you've seen your own data center. That's it. So when you're on the outside and we see hundreds or thousands of projects a year, it's a much different level of exposure. And the more exposure you have, the more nice, cool, neat things you see. These guys just simply either don't have the education or the opportunity to really go out and learn what's new. So they just sort of rinse and repeat year over year with what's going on.
That brings us to somewhat of a confusing intersection, because as executive management is becoming more tech savvy, what I'm hearing you say is that our technology subject matter experts may or may not be keeping up with the latest technology that an organization may need to survive, to grow, to expand.
It actually gets a little more complicated than that as well, because the guys that come to sell to the guys that are supposed to recommend the technologies to the corporate boards or the C-level suite guys, they are compensated based on quotas. I think we all are aware of that. So if I have $1 million quota, let's just use this as an example, and I'm supposed to be selling the iPods and the cameras and all these other things that get me to that $1 million, when I go back 3 years later to go back and refresh all those technologies for a company, and there's the iPhone that costs $500, it's not like I was not working half the week and now I can just go work the other half of the week and go sell twice as much to get to that same number. I'm working just as hard now to try and sell that new product, but for half of the reward and for half of the quota retirement. So what happens is a lot of these companies that have spent a lot of time teaching their own engineers and their own salespeople how to sell the old technology that they've been very, very successful at, don't want to make the move to cloud, or they don't want to make the move to things like hyperconverged, which is what I mentioned before, because it's one, less money for them. Even though it's better for the client, they have to have a way to get to that quota number. And of course, quotas don't shrink. So if I did $1 million 3 years ago, probably I'm at $1.5 million or $2 million. So now you have this two things working against the CEO level guys. You've got your internal IT team that doesn't have exposure to all the new ideas and who are afraid that if they do bring in the new stuff, they won't know how to run it or they won't have the budget to go learn it. And the guys coming to sell them are the same guys that have been around for a long time and that have established themselves as the leaders in the previous generation's technologies, and they don't really want to talk about the new stuff. So it's a very, very difficult position for, if you take both of those things, you're almost in this bubble, and the C-level guys looking through the bubble saying, these are my only options.
Right. So what is your advice for our listeners who are right now realizing they may very well be in this situation?
Well, then the shameless plug of saying, call me, I'll help you, but that's besides the point. I think it's back to my earlier kind of joke about how your mother used to say you should have friends in all these different types of jobs that are very important in life. The C-level guys usually do a great job of having a group of peers. I'm in a CEO group here locally with guys that are wide-ranging industries, from running universities to concrete plants. And we all have the same, even though we have different businesses, we all have the same sorts of problems, whether it's how do we pay our salespeople? How do we learn about new technology? How do we do benefits? So the C-level suite guys really have a good set of peers there to get information from and to bounce ideas off of. However, because they're in different industries, more than often than not, you're probably not going to, if you're Pepsi, you're not going to go talk to Coke CEO about what you're doing technology-wise. They're not going to talk to you. So you've got to do sort of what your mother would tell you to do, which is find outside people outside of that bubble to really go and get some ideas from, right? So that could be user groups for particular types of technology. It could be you going out and doing a lot of research and reading yourselves. Not that a CEO level guy is going to go out there and start reading, Fast Company and a bunch of different IT magazines, but keeping your head out of the sand and keeping your head out looking for the things that you really want to do with your business, and then having conversations with guys that maybe aren't in the mix right now. Whether that be a new vendor, whether that be consultants, someone that you can go to and kind of get a nice independent discussion going with, that they're not afraid to tell you the truth. Or maybe they're really trying to earn the business and they want to bring you a new idea, to bring you some new things. But have a business reason around it. Don't go looking for someone that's got a better widget or a better flash drive, whatever it might be. Look for somebody that says, hey, we need a better way to be able to support our 5,000 field salespeople that are trying to take photographs and, they're jobbers. They go out and build, multifamily housing or whatever it might be. Those are the kind of conversations that really lead to, hey, well, yes, we've done this 3 or 4 other times. Here's some new technologies that are out there. And then you can go back and have those conversations with your internal team and say, why don't we look at something like this? What are the drawbacks against, what could you find for me? Here's an idea, a place to start. What else could you find for me given the people that you talk to?
So I've heard you say challenge your current supply chain for new ideas. Tell us more about that thought.
Yeah, so again, if we get back to the bubble analogy, right? So if I have a current set of vendors that sell everything from my ERP software, let's say if you're a major corporation, all the way down to who provides my circuits, who provides my phone systems. There's a list, your roster of who you guys normally buy from as a company, right? Even this company has that, I'm sure. At every level, there's innovations going on. That's one of the really interesting things. I've been in this now, it's my 27th year. The first 15, 16 years, there really wasn't a tremendous amount of change in technology, but it seems like the last dozen or so years, like every single thing that we thought we knew and we were darn sure we were going to build a career around has been disrupted. And so the ideas are out there, the technology is out there. It's knowing where to go and find it, and not necessarily always relying on the internal IT guys to try and tell you about new ideas, because again, most of them are not incented, if you will, to make lots and lots of changes, because that's weekend and night work, right? Or maybe it's something that's actually going to be hosted and supported by some other third-party company, making them less valuable. So it's a little bit of, you've got to foster some creativity within the organization itself and let them know it's okay if there are new things that come out that maybe they're not going to be running and turning the screws on every day, because now they can really get back to what they should be doing, which is leveraging those new technologies to create environments where the business can flourish. We were in a meeting yesterday up in North Carolina with a company that has 7 or 8 guys that have been doing all of the wrench turning for years and years and years. And we were bringing in a new solution that basically for a third of the price of one of their junior level guys would save 3 of them 4 or 5 months worth of work every single year. And they were kind of blown away by that fact, but then they were also, you could see them looking, at each other like, what does this mean for us? So we had to actually kind of anticipate that, and along with the talk track was find out what other initiatives they were working on. It turns out they were working on some big data initiatives. They were trying to move out to a co-located data center, and they didn't have the time to do these sort of things. And so now we made that part of the narrative of, if you do this, then now you guys have collectively 12 months of work time that is going to be freed up to make those projects a reality. And those projects were 10 times more valuable than somebody running a phone system.
Well, Rob, thank you for offering that great advice and for helping management get a better understanding of how their IT environment and how to work with internal IT vendors and advisors to provide an optimal environment for their organization.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for listening to Frazier Deeter's Culture of Compliance podcast, and please join us for our next episode as we continue to discuss transforming compliance requirements into investments in your business.
Thanks for listening to one of Frazier and Deeter's branded podcasts. To learn more, connect with us on LinkedIn or visit us at frazierdeeter.com and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode.